Sin in and of itself brings death. Okay, now, we first and foremost think of that most of the time as human beings with regard to our physical bodies, and we're going to be talking about that here in a minute. But there's more to it. Okay, there's more to it than simply life and death with regard to the physical body. There has to be more. And Paul is saying there is more. There is more. When you hear that, the law of the Spirit of life, okay, Paul is saying people followed the law as the guideline, as the rule. Now, since Christ has come, he has brought a new law. He is the new guideline. He is the measuring rod upon which we should be comparing our lives to. Okay, we are taught by the law, but through Christ, we are no longer condemned under the law. Therefore, if Christ is in us, God's Spirit is in us, and through that Spirit, if Christ is alive, then we are saved. We are made alive. Therefore, it is the Spirit that brings life. Okay, the law of the Spirit that brings life. Take a look at verse 3.
For what the law was powerless to do in that it was weakened by the sinful nature, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful man to be a sin offering, and so he condemned sin in sinful man.
What is significant in verse 3? God sending his Son as a sin offering. That's a part of it. What does it say about when God sent his Son? How did he send his Son? In the likeness of, what was that? Of sinful man. In the Greek, Paul uses a word here, and he uses it a little bit interchangeably. Here for man and for nature, he uses the word sarkos. Sarkos. Does anybody know what that means? Do you remember?
I don't know. I think it's flesh.
It is. It is flesh. Okay. When Paul talks about the flesh, you need to know that he is interchanging that in three different ways, between flesh, nature, and man. Okay, isn't it interesting that those three are integrally tied together? All right. Why was it so important that God send his Son in the likeness of sinful man?
Because it said already back in the Old Testament, the soul that sins shall die.
Because it said in the Old Testament that the soul that sins shall die.
And so Jesus had to come in the likeness of us sinful people in order to do anything about it.
Okay, so Jesus had to come in the likeness of us sinful human beings in order to do anything about it. Why is Jesus able to do something about it and not somebody else? What was that? Because he was without sin. It was a human being who was without sin, who committed the first sin, yes? Therefore, it was essential that a sinless person also make the atonement, make that offering. Okay? Look at the beginning of verse 3, though. There's something very important there that needed to be driven home to those who had Jewish heritage. The law couldn't do it. The law was powerless. Now, you need to understand, as a Jew, that would be like somebody taking a dagger and sticking it in your heart. I mean, this was what they had lived by. They were the chosen people. God had given them the book of the law. This is what separated them from everybody else. And now Paul says the law is powerless to save you. You can't save you. God had to do it. And he sent his only Son in the likeness of human beings. In other words, in every facet, Jesus Christ was human, 100% human. Right? A lot of people even people who are new to the faith, may read this and they may think, well, sure, it was easy for him. He was God. Jesus was 100% divine. But never ever mistake the fact that he was also 100% human. All right, Paul is the same person who wrote Philippians, and in Philippians, in what's called the Christ hymn in the 2nd chapter, he talks about how Christ emptied himself. All right, in other words, Christ, though he was 100% divine, never ever made use of his divine nature to protect himself, to care for himself, or to help him, to enable him to do something that God called upon him to do. He did everything as a human being. Anything that he did as miracles, where did he reflect the glory for that? That was kind of a loaded question because I already gave you information on that just by asking where did he reflect. He didn't accept any of the praise or glory for any of the miracles or signs he did he? Did he not always reflect them back up? All right? Jesus was showing everyone he was human. All right? I can't, and I'm not even going to begin to try and explain to you how he can be 100% human and how he can be 100% divine. None of us can explain that completely, or I don't think that any of us will ever understand that completely until someday when God brings us home. Verse 11, talking about our resurrection. Okay? But it's extremely important to understand that when he came in the likeness of human beings, it was because he came as a human being. And therefore, he was the only one who could be that offering to make atonement for sin. An extremely important point. The law is powerless to do it on its own. The law has the ability to show us what our sin is, to help us truly understand just exactly what sin is, how sinful and fallen we are, but that's as far as it can go. It cannot save us. It's a tool that God uses to help direct us and to guide us and to teach us, but salvation comes through Jesus Christ. That is essential.